And we are live.
All right. Thank you, Ina. Welcome. Welcome to our Facebook Live session. And today's topic is employee information. So, employees, thank you for joining us. I would like to introduce my guest this afternoon, Dr. James Driscoll. Big wave to Dr. James Driscoll. He is our Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources who has dedicated months to learning everything he knows about how to lead through this global pandemic and in order to support our employees in the best way possible. So I'm so glad that James is here to join us today. But before we get started, I want to thank you, our employees. It takes 10,000 employees to provide learning experiences for over 60,000 kids in our school system. It's because of you and the work that you do that our district does such a great job building our community and a better future. So thank you. I want you to know how valued you are, how much we appreciate you, and how much we depend upon you to provide all that you do, all of your expertise and talent to support our children. We know that there are so many uncertainties as we're living through this global pandemic, and that's the reason that we wanted to do these Facebook Live sessions with our community and with our employees. So thank you for joining in this new experiment for us. This is our third event, and I think I learn more every single time. So let's see how we do today. But again, thank you very, very much. I want you to know what we do know and what has been guiding our decision-making and our thinking as we have worked through the COVID-19 pandemic. The first thing is that we have made a commitment that student and staff safety is of the utmost importance to us. And we know that we're a people business. Over 80% of our budget is dedicated to employing you, our employees, to do the great work that needs to be done to support our students. So that means that we have to have safe students, safe employees, and healthy employees so that we can continue to do the great work that we have always done for over 120 years in Mesa Public Schools. So you are the heart of our work. While many of our employees have been able to work throughout this pandemic, some of you have been working remotely and some of you have been coming to work every single day, and you are what we call on those front lines. So I want to give a special shout out to our custodial and maintenance teams who have been working tirelessly day and night to make sure that our buildings are safe, that they are clean, and that they are prepared for all of the functions that happen within them now during school closure and as we prepare for in-person learning. So again, to our custodial staff, our maintenance teams, I want to say thank you to you. Your work has not gone unnoticed. And teachers, I'd like to say welcome. Welcome to your first contracted day of this very unusual and very different school year that we will never forget. The school year of 2021. So teachers, welcome back. And the rest of our staff that are joining us today, thank you. Thank you for your tireless commitment, your flexibility, and your grace as we navigate these uncertain times. I want to, as we jump into questions, you're going to hear some new things that we've learned, new acronyms, for example. In this world of COVID-19, there's an acronym that Dr. Driscoll has taught me, and that acronym is FFCRA. And if that's new to you, I'll define it so that it'll be helpful as we move through our time together. That is the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. That will have impact on some of the answers that Dr. Driscoll provides to you. So if it's something that you want to do some more research on, again, that is the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. And that defines the relationship of employees to their employer during this global pandemic. So with that, I am going to watch my phone because that is how all the questions come into us. So please fill up the chat with questions. We will stay on top of it as quickly as we possibly can. And I am going, well, here we go, Dr. Driscoll. We have our first question that is coming in, and that one is, how is Mesa Public Schools going to keep our employees safe? Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yes, good afternoon, and welcome to those out there watching us on Facebook Live. So this has been a question I've been getting a ton of lately. And so first we'll start off by saying that the reason why we're here today is because our governing board, our superintendent, has valued the safety of our staff, students, visitors. And so we have made the declaration that we're not coming back until we can actually ensure that we can keep our staff, students, visitors safe as possible. So the first step in that is following CDC, county health, and state health guidelines. And so we monitor those daily. The governor, with his new executive order, just came out with it on August 7th. The health agencies will give us benchmarks or metrics for us to use in terms of opening schools. So that is the one aspect that we will look at, is those benchmarks and metrics that we get there. We also look at different guidelines for our employees in their working environment. So many of you, if you haven't got the email, will get an email to talk about our safety protocols. And one of that starts with training. So last 2 nights ago, I got on and did the training where it outlined how COVID-19 has started, protections of what you can do in terms of face masks, face shields. And so that's one of the first things that we will do. We also will have all our employees take an attestation, which they can do from their app or on their phone or on their computers. And that attestation will kind of tell us, hey, am I healthy to come to work today? And if not, we will say, hey, please stay home. Please stay home, because that's the first step in any of this. If you're not feeling well, that you stay home and that you and practice that as well. The biggest thing is training. And for you guys to know that each school will be provided by the district for PPE, and that's personal protection equipment. I always crack up with acronyms because I was like, why do people keep saying PPE? What is that? It's personal protection equipment. So that is one of the other things that we have outlined, and the district is providing that to schools and departments as well. We're looking at how your workplace is configured. And so many of your front offices will have plexiglass in areas where you come in contact with community members, just as an extra precaution. I know here in the Human Resource Department, we've been processing all our new teachers. So congratulations for most of you new teachers out there, your first day. But many of you have come in and seen us with plexiglass and other safety precautions. So we're doing all of that because we want to make sure that all our employees are safe, and all our students and families as well. So those are some of the things that we have done to make sure that you're safe. But obviously the biggest question for you guys is how it's safe. We won't bring you back unless we have the metrics to ensure that we feel like we can safely, our students and staff can safely be on campus following the CDC, county, and state recommendations.
Thank you so much, Dr. Driscoll. I think that there's this debate that is continuing within our communities that talks about, should we have a date? And I know that it's very frustrating for many people that are planners like I am to say, just tell me the date we're going to start school. Well, it's not that easy. And so I really appreciate that our governor has been listening, that we do need data to help determine those safety metrics. So that is a step in the right direction. And we will be paying very close attention to those. So I'm going to go into a question that we just received, and that is, what is expected of a teacher in the remote learning environment? So I'm going to turn that to Dr. Driscoll in just a minute, but I want to set a frame around that. I want you to think about classroom teachers. There is a very, very, very special art to teaching, as well as a science to teaching. And that art of teaching has flexibility and adaptability. And we know that our most successful teachers are constantly responding to the needs of their students and the needs of their community. And we want that to happen in a remote environment as well. So what we are going to share with you is what we have printed and put out for public view on our website, that Safe, Strong, Ready Plan to Open Schools. We've put some guidelines out, and understand that those are guidelines, and they are so difficult to try to summarize the art and the science of teaching so many different grade levels, so many different content areas, and put it into one document. So what we are sharing with you is that guidance, and that, of course, the art and science of teaching is going to be respected and embraced as we work through remote environments. So, Dr. Driscoll, to you.
I don't know how I follow that up. So being an HR guy, I always crack up. I'm always rules, policies, procedures, and working conditions. So what we expect for teachers is one, follow our policies and procedures. But in total, I always crack up the human and human resources is we want you to connect with students. I mean, our students have been away for so long, and that's the biggest part of our being is students. So take that time to connect with your students, get to know them, and it's going to be weird being in a remote setting, but figure out ways that you can connect with them, because ultimately those connections that you make with the students is going to be the determinant of how successful they're going to be. We want you to be flexible. Understand that some of your students are going to have some unique needs, and you're going to have to be cognizant of that as you deal with this new remote setting. Collaborate. Figure out ways of how you're going to collaborate remotely with your team and staff mates. One of the biggest things that I keep harping is make sure we're social distancing, and we're doing it in remote setting. So find out ways where you and your teams can come together and talk and have those communications with each other, because collaboration is going to be key with all our students that you guys are going to be interacting with. And just utilizing district resources. So the district has spent a lot of time over this summer providing and purchasing resources for you. So utilize those resources, but don't be afraid to ask for help and guidance if you need it. We have many specialists and coaches that are out there, administrators that are really here to help you. And if you do those things, I think we'll get through this. But you guys are our front line. You are right there in the day-to-day operations with our students. You are our touch point. And so it is important for you to build those relationships, and you also be safe and healthy as well, and build relationships with your staff mates.
Thank you, Dr. Driscoll. And I also, that was pretty good for the policy guy. So let's also think about parents. Parents want to know what the structure is going to look like. They need to be able to adequately plan their days, their time, their resources to support their children in this remote environment. So what we have shared with parents is that students will receive what their schedule looks like. So at the end of 1 week, they will receive the schedule for the following week, and that just helps them plan. And so I think that's critical, that that is done within your collaborative teams, working within your professional learning communities, and working with your administrators around what that looks like. So I wish I could tell you, here is the schedule. Here are all of the things that you need to do. That is found on our website, that our Safe, Strong, Ready plan to open schools. You will see a sample schedule for a 3rd grader, an 8th grader, and an 11th grader. That also includes special ed services as well. So please use those resources. But remember, adaptability and flexibility in working with your principal is the most important piece of all of this. So we are having questions that are coming in right now. When will schools open? I wish that I had a crystal ball that tells us when our schools are going to open for in-person teacher-led instruction. And I'm using those words really specifically because those are coming directly out of the executive order. There's another acronym that people are now calling it an EO. So if you hear the EO, that's an executive order. We're at number 51 now. Most current is 51. Also, the governor is coming out with a press conference tomorrow. So we might have another executive order. So we also have to be very flexible and adaptable to respond. So let's think about when will schools open. As Dr. Driscoll said, we will have a set of benchmarks. Our school district, working with our governing board, will identify, it sounds like what we're being told, is that we will have the opportunity to decide how we're going to use those benchmarks to determine when we open school. So there is no set date for teacher-led in-person instruction. At this point, that will be, those metrics are coming our direction August 7th. So please keep that in mind, and we're going to keep you all updated. So we've got a question specific to bus drivers. Dr. Driscoll, you might know this answer. I don't. So here we go. We're going to try this one. Okay. Will bus drivers be given time to learn their routes before the in-person day of instruction? I think that's what that transition time you're telling me is.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, and I would say yes, because that would be a part of meaningful work. And so just like we do every year, bus drivers are running routes before school starts. I know I see them when I'm driving in as they're preparing to optimize our student experience. So yes, that would be considered meaningful work, and I believe that is built into our transition time.
And what Dr. Driscoll is referring to, many of you may have seen a slide that we have shared that talks about, so what is it, how is Mesa Public Schools going to open up our schools? Well, we made a commitment that on August 4th, that we are going to start with our first day of learning. And that was very intentional. We wanted to make sure that we did not disrupt compensation or benefits for our employees. If we pushed back the start date of school, that would have had an interruption of compensation and benefits. And that was not something that we were willing to do. We have committed that we're keeping our employees working and we're keeping them working in meaningful work. So let's talk about that. We start remote August 4th, and then we will move into what we call modified in-person. Some districts, some places call this hybrid. Our families really don't know exactly what hybrid means. That sounds like a car to most people. So we wanted to make sure that we're calling this modified in-person. So that would be a rotating schedule where students are there with their teacher in an in-person model 2 days a week, 1 week, and 3 days the next. And that would continue to rotate. So in order for us to move from remote to modified in-person, that takes some transition and some planning. And so Dr. Driscoll and I are negotiating on the time it takes to do that, because of course I want to go fast. And he says, slow down, we got to get this right. So during that transition time is when we would bring bus drivers back in this particular question to say, run your routes, get ready, because that would be moving you into a next form of meaningful work. After modified in person, we would move to in person. We believe a phased approach is the most responsible for us. So we'll continue to talk about that if that comes up. Okay, I'm looking here. Well, I'll answer this one. Lots of questions about taking attendance. How are we going to take attendance? So taking attendance, boy, that is a big one. So when kids are in a remote environment, it doesn't look like our typical taking of attendance. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to assure you that we have a very smart team working on what does that look like. And I also promise you that we're going to have an answer by August 4th. And that's probably not soon enough for most people. So the difference is when you take attendance in a virtual environment and in a face-to-face environment, what does that look like? And if students are with you for synchronous learning versus asynchronous learning. And so we are working on all of that. So you've got my word. Smart people are working on it. We're going to get an answer. It's a hot topic. Okay, let's talk about, here's a good one. Dr. Driscoll, this one's all you. What if I have a medical condition that prevents me from coming back to my work in an in-person environment?
Oh, yes, this is it. So for those employees, we have a number of options. So one of the things I would say first is we see one, if you qualify for FFCRA, because you could be eligible for that. You could be eligible for one of those, but ultimately we would engage with you in the ADA interactive process. And so with all our employees that have medical needs, you could qualify for accommodations under ADA, and we would engage with you in that process. After that, depending on where we're at in our setting, we could be still in remote, or we could be in transitioning to the modified in person. Well, we're offering still remote setting as well. So that would be one of the things that we would look at as well, as maybe you would be an employee that would stay in the remote setting and do instruction with that, because we know we have students that still want to stay in a remote setting. And so kind of our district guide is that we will continue to have remote setting for our students, as well as the modified in person when we do those transitions. So that is another option that we would have available for you as well.
Okay, another popular question. What happens if there is a student in my classroom, or maybe I'm a colleague in my department that tests positive for COVID-19? What happens, Dr. Driscoll?
Well, we have to follow our safety protocol. So CDC and county has strict regulations that we would have to do. So one, looking at all the people that would have possibly came in contact with that employee or that student, look at the social distancing, were they in contact with that individual for more than 10 minutes in a 6 feet space, and then go from there. The CDC and the county actually have particular guidelines for how the school has to handle that in terms of reporting. And then we defer to them in terms of that as well.
Excellent. We're going to keep going with questions here. So this one is, how much time will we have to transition from remote to modified in person and then on to in person? Will I have time to set up my classroom or to my office? And that answer is yes, you will have time. That's what we keep talking about. How much time do we need to make that move? So that is all part of the planning because we know that that is important. Our work environments are incredibly important to us. Let's talk about work environments. Some are asking, how do I get personal protection equipment, Dr. Driscoll, including plexiglass?
Yes. So your school sites and departments, they will be able to order it from the district. The district has already bought supplies to our purchasing department, but the district will be supplying those the PPE equipment to you guys as a staff. So we plan on doing that. That's one of our plans, and I know we send out communication to principals to with the order. Here's the stuff we have available, and we have all these different PPE equipment available. The plexiglass, you might go back to your campus and already see it. I know district operations team was fast and furious this summer, equipping some of our areas, especially our high volume areas, with those plexiglass. But if you're in a high volume area, contact your site administrator or your district administrator, and they will look at that and contact the operation. But I know the district operation has been doing it across the board, across the district, plexiglass installation in many places.
And I think I see a question in here about plexiglass, a desk divider in my classroom when we come back. Should I need that? Would we have those available for a teacher desk, an employee desk, and student desks?
I don't want to spend money out of Scott Thompson's budget, but what I will say is that part of the modified in-person plan is that we factored in the social distancing and the students in classrooms as well. So part of that, you will be able to social distance your students in that modified in-person setting in accordance to CDC and county guidelines. But I would have to defer to Scott Thompson on that one if we bought plexiglass, because I have no clue on that in terms of for the students.
And Dr. Driscoll, I have seen that we have placed some orders. We have not purchased a lot of them because we're waiting to see how many we think that we might need and what that looks like. So we will order based on need. And another shout out for our operations department. They've been creating their own. They've been taking the plexiglass and they're fabricating much of this. So they're getting ready. That's part of that safe part of our plan. Here's one. If an employee can't work on a computer due to a seizure disorder, can they work on site?
Yes, and so part of our telework policy and our general district guidelines is that we've said to employees that to the extent possible that you can work remotely to do the essential functions of your job, you do that. But we do know there's going to be situations like some of our employees have trouble with internet. And so they would have to come into the site to have reliable internet to do their instruction with their students. So that is a possibility, and that's what you work with your supervisor on, because we know that those unique needs come up. We would prefer that everybody, to the extent possible, work remotely, but we know that there, for some people, is not going to be the case. I know I'll share personal. I know that some of you have little ones at home, and I would tell you, I've had calls like, hey, can I come into work because I cannot work with my 3 and 5-year-old screaming in the background. That is not really to the extent possible, but yes, coming from a dad of a 5 and 3-year-old, I understand your pain. COVID reality is what I've said.
And that relates to a question that came in, Dr. Driscoll. Can teachers teach from their classroom? And that answer is yes. Work with your principal to make sure that if you need to be in your classroom to teach as a teacher, absolutely. Specific equipment, access to the internet, a quiet space. We know that some school districts are mandating that. That is a choice for Mesa Public School teachers and to work with their administrators. Okay, let's talk about, James, here we go. Will classified employees be paid if they are working remotely?
Yes, if they're doing meaningful work, yes, they would be paid remotely. And so one of the instances I use, and I use it from my daughter, her classified aide that worked in her classroom, she was the person on the computer helping the teacher say, hey, Johnny has a question. And so the meaningful work is the big thing. So we, in this time right now, at this point in time, we're saying work remotely. And so, yes, classified employees who are tasked to work remotely doing meaningful work would be paid for that.
Yeah, and I'm just absolutely amazed at the amount of work that is being done remotely. Boy, this has changed our mind about what telework looks like. And Dr. Driscoll talked about a telework policy. We didn't have a telework policy in Mesa Public Schools until this pandemic. So We now have one. And as he's the policy guy, we know what it means to work in a remote environment. And so we're very open minded about that. Let's have another conversation here. Dr. Driscoll, on the flip side, can I be required to work on site?
So yes, but what I say with the caveat is that we charge all our supervisors, our leaders, to the extent possible that you employees work remotely. Now there are people who have to work in person. So I'll give you a case in point. In our office, we process employees classified, certificated, and part of that classification, that processing process, is that some of our employees have to do I-9 documentation. Well, the federal government has strict guidelines on the I-9 documentation, which means that we have to physically see the document and play and basically manipulate it. And so for some of my employees, they're here because part of the processing guidelines for I-9 is that they have to see the original document. And so they would be required to come here. But in all other cases when they don't have to do that, they are working remotely from home. And so, yes, you could be required to come in. And that's where if you feel like I can't come in because I have a health condition or something, that's when you need to talk to your supervisor, see if you might qualify for one of our leaves or FFCRA eligibility, or if you have an ADA accommodation that we can meet. But there are some cases where employees have to come in. And the supervisor does have to direct that. If you call HR, we'll say, hey, we look at it and say, is this something that the employee has to come in and do? And if we can determine that there's no other way, I'm thinking of a school psychologist. So part of their work is testing students. And so a majority of their work they could do from home. They're writing the report and stuff like that. But the physical testing of students, there's protocols and mandates that they have to be in person with them. That's where they would have to come in and do that work. And once that work is done, go home to the extent possible and work remotely. So yes.
There's a question here about how do I support my students on their individual education plans and the minutes and delivering those minutes. Yesterday, our topic was all about special education. So I want to let you know that if you're concerned about that, please reach out to your area director or your coach and who will help guide through that. Now, if you're a gen ed teacher, excuse me, if you're a general education student or teacher, work with that resource teacher as well as your principal and the department chair and or the special ed department. There was a plethora of information that was shared yesterday, and this is a good time to tell you, we are posting these recorded sessions of these Facebook Live sessions on our district website on that Safe, Strong, Ready page. So if you want to go back and look at that for special education, great resource to be able to do that. Okay, let's talk about cleaning for a second. I'm concerned about the HVAC. Is the airflow clean and adequate?
According to Scott Thompson, yes. So, but our operations department, they do a wonderful job of making sure, maintaining our facilities and making sure our air quality is good. That I would tell you, you can always, I know coming from a site, being a site administrator or principal at a school where employees said, hey, I think our air quality isn't to snuff. I called operations department, operations came out, did a test, found out, oh, nope, we need to do something. And they did their magic and work. So yes, our air quality should be up the code. But at any time, if you ever have questions about that, you contact your immediate supervisor, they can contact operations, and operations will work with your site administrator to make sure that the air quality is where it should be.
And to add on to that, that you will see in our health and safety protocols, classroom doors, when we go back to in-person instruction, classroom doors are closed. And that might sound a little funny, like, why do I, other than a physical safety reason, what we do know is when the doors are open and we have other air and particles that come through, it makes it more difficult for air filtration. I hope I'm saying that correctly. So, but I do know that the doors being closed is part of making sure that the air quality is as good as it can be in a class. I think I may have gotten kicked out of our meeting. Are we back, James?
Yes, I hear you.
Okay.
I see you now too.
Crazy. All right. That happened to me the other day. Don't know what that is. I think they're telling me I talk too much. All right. So we are coming to the 4:30 mark, and I am going to scan questions very quickly. And I know the question I wanted to answer. One is asking that question: who will staff the free learning support centers? Those free learning support centers are part of the governor's executive order that beginning August 17th, that schools provide free safe spaces for kids who need it. That is something where we are working through those details, and I'll tell you a little bit of the complexities. We have some data that is coming to us on August 7th. It says this data can guide your opening of your schools to teacher-led in-person instruction. And then we have another executive order that has a date assigned to it that says on August 17th, we have to open these up. So we are getting additional guidance from the Arizona Department of Education and the governor's office on what does that mean exactly. As we continue to read through them, we see some conflicting information, and we're working really hard to get that right answer. But we do know that that is an expectation for us. So stay tuned for more information. We are working through that. And if you've got any great ideas, certainly share those with your supervisors, who will share them up through superintendency. And we'd love to hear great ideas, because that is a big one for us to tackle. In fact, that is top of mind for us at our superintendency meeting tomorrow morning. There's another question here. I'm going to tidy it up with this. I'm watching our time. Will special education students return earlier than others? Within the executive order, that is allowed for special education students to return prior to the entire school coming back to in-person. So again, we are working with our special education team, working with the parents and the teachers of our special education students to decide when is that best plan. Other surrounding districts have already decided what that's going to look like. We've been a little slower because we're waiting to see some of those metrics, but we are engaged in that conversation. So again, stay tuned for more coming your way. And I think that summarized the bulk of the questions that we received that came through to us. If we missed one of your questions, I promise you, I go through the chat when we're done. And if I can get back to you or get you to the right person, I'm going to do everything I can to make that happen for you. So, Dr. Driscoll, thank you very, very much. And
thank you, Dr. Corliss.
Goodbye. And thank you. Ina, you want to put up our slide? Thank you so much. There you go. Everything you need to know and where to find it on our website. So thank you. Enjoy your evening, and thank you for your time with us this afternoon.